I knew something was wrong before anyone said a word. It was the way the house sounded that morning, too quiet in the wrong places, too loud in others. The kettle hissed longer than usual, the clock in the hallway ticked like it was counting down to something, and even the sunlight coming through the kitchen window felt cold, like it didn't belong there. It was supposed to be a simple Sunday. Not a holiday, not a celebration, just one of those ordinary mornings where I still tried, out of habit more than hope, to make everything feel like a family again. I had woken up early, as I always did. Old habits don't leave you just because life changes. I made coffee, set the table, and cooked breakfast: eggs, toast, fresh fruit, even baked muffins from scratch. I don't know why I bothered with the muffins. Maybe some part of me still believed that effort could fix distance. By the time they came downstairs, everything was ready. Ethan walked in first, my son. 35 years old, but lately he carried himself like a man much older, weighed down by something he refused to name. Behind him came Clara, his wife, already scrolling on her phone, her face lit by the screen instead of the morning light. Neither of them noticed the table. "Morning," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. Ethan muttered something that might have been a greeting. Clara didn't respond at all. She sat down, crossed her legs, and kept scrolling. I placed a cup of coffee near her hand anyway. That's when she said it. "You know," Clara began, her tone casual, almost bored, "this really isn't working anymore." I paused, still holding the coffee pot midair. "What isn't?" She didn't look at me. "This derangement." Ethan shifted in his chair, but didn't speak. I slowly set the pot down. "I'm not sure what you mean." Clara finally glanced up, and there was something in her eyes I hadn't seen clearly before. Something sharp, something final. "I mean, Sophia," she said, "you living here, it's just a lot." A lot. Such a small phrase for something that hit like a collapse. "I cook. I clean. I take care of the house," I said quietly. "What exactly is a lot?" She gave a small laugh, like I had misunderstood something obvious. "It's not about chores. It's about space. Energy. We're trying to build something here, and it's hard when there's an extra person." An extra person. I looked at Ethan. He stared at his plate. "Ethan?" I said. He cleared his throat. "Maybe we should just talk about it calmly." Calmly. The word made my chest tighten. "I am calm," I said. "I just want to understand why I suddenly feel like a guest in my own home." Clara sighed, finally putting her phone down. "Because things change. You moved in after everything happened, and that made sense at the time. But it's been 2 years now. We need our own life." I felt something shift inside me. Not break, not yet, but crack. "I didn't move in," I said slowly. "This house." Yes, she interrupted, waving her hand. "Technically, you helped buy it. But Ethan is the one managing everything now. It's really more our responsibility." Our responsibility. I turned again to my son. He still wouldn't look at me. "Do you agree with her?" I asked. Silence. That was my answer. I sat down. Not because I wanted to, but because my legs suddenly didn't trust me anymore. "I see," I said. Clara leaned back, satisfied, as if the hardest part of the conversation was already over. "We've actually been looking into options. There are some really nice places nearby. Communities where people your age can be more comfortable, more engaged." My age. Communities. The words hung in the air like something clinical, something rehearsed. "You mean a facility," I said. "A lifestyle upgrade," she corrected. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I looked around the kitchen. The same kitchen where I had once taught Ethan how to hold a spoon, where birthday cakes had been made, where laughter used to echo without effort. Now it felt like a place I had wandered into by mistake. "I don't think I need a lifestyle upgrade," I said. Clara's smile tightened. It's not really about what you think you need. It's about what makes sense for everyone. There it was. Not a conversation. A decision. And I hadn't been part of it. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low. Mom, we just want what's best for you. I looked at him, really looked at him. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. Not confusion. Not hesitation. Convenience. What's best for me? I repeated. Or what's easiest for you? He flinched. Clara stood up abruptly. I don't think this is productive. No, I said, rising slowly. It's very productive. I'm learning exactly where I stand. Neither of them answered, because there was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out of the kitchen. No one stopped me. Upstairs, my room felt smaller than it ever had before. Not physically. Nothing had changed, but the walls felt closer, the air heavier, like the space itself knew I no longer belonged. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my hands. They were shaking. Not from fear. From realization. Because this hadn't happened overnight. This moment, this conversation had been building quietly, piece by piece, for months. The small comments. The subtle exclusions. The way decisions were made, without me. The way my presence had slowly shifted from welcome to tolerated and now unwanted. And I had let it happen. I had adjusted. Compromised. Stayed quiet. I had made myself smaller, thinking it would preserve peace. But all it had done was make it easier for them to forget I was there at all. A strange calm settled over me then. Not sadness. Not yet. Something colder. Something clearer. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking how to fix this. I was asking something else entirely. What happens when you stop trying to belong somewhere you're no longer wanted? Downstairs, I could hear them talking again, soft voices, controlled, already moving on from the conversation like it was just another task completed. I stood up, walked to the mirror, and looked at myself. Sophia, I said quietly. My own name sounded unfamiliar, like I hadn't used it in a long time, like I had been someone else. But not anymore. Something had changed. Not outside. Inside. And whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. I would never sit at that table the same way again. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe around me, the pipes shifting, the floorboards settling, the faint hum of electricity behind the walls. It used to be a comforting sound, like the house was alive and holding us together. Now it felt different, like I was listening from the outside, like I had already been removed from something I hadn't realized I was losing. I kept replaying the morning in my head, every word, every glance, every silence. But what stayed with me the most wasn't what Clara had said. It was what Ethan hadn't. Silence has a weight to it, a kind of quiet betrayal that echoes louder than shouting. And his silence had been absolute. At some point, I must have drifted off, because when I opened my eyes again, the room was dim and gray with early morning light. My body felt heavy, like I had aged years overnight. But my mind was sharp, clear, uncomfortable, but awake in a way it hadn't been in a long time. I got up quietly and went downstairs, more out of habit than hunger. The kitchen still smelled faintly of coffee from the day before. I made a fresh pot anyway, the motions automatic, measure, pour, wait. The routine gave me something to hold on to. I had just poured myself a cup when I heard voices from the living room. Clara's voice, low but tense. I'm telling you, we can't keep doing this. I froze. Ethan answered, quieter. Not so loud. They're asleep, she said. And even if they weren't, maybe it's time we stopped pretending. My fingers tightened around the mug. I knew I shouldn't listen, but I didn't move. You saw how she reacted, Clara continued. She's going to make this difficult. She's my mother, Ethan said, and there was something defensive in his voice, but weak, like even he didn't fully believe it. And she's also a problem, Clara replied immediately. Both things can be true. A problem. I felt something hollow open inside my chest. There was a pause, and then Ethan sighed. What do you want me to do? I want you to follow through, Clara said. We talked about this. We agreed. The longer we wait, the worse it gets. Follow through. On what? I took a slow step closer to the doorway, my heart beating harder now, not from fear, but from something else. Something sharper. She won't agree easily, Ethan said. She doesn't have to, Clara answered, her voice calm, almost clinical. That's the point. The words landed like ice water. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, she said, we present it as a necessity, not a choice. Frame it as concern. Safety. Well-being. You know how these things work. I gripped the edge of the wall. These things. Like I was a case. A situation to manage. Ethan hesitated. I don't know. Clara exhaled sharply. Ethan, listen to yourself. We've been carrying this for 2 years. 2 years. Do you know how much it's cost us? Not just money, everything. Privacy, freedom, our plans. We can't keep putting our lives on hold. Our lives. As if I wasn't part of them. As if I was the interruption. Ethan paused. I don't want to hurt her. Clara laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think she hasn't already hurt us? Look around. We're stuck. Completely stuck. And for what? Because you feel guilty. Guilty. That word lingered. For Dad? Ethan said quietly. Yes, Clara snapped. For something that wasn't even your fault. But you've turned that guilt into this obligation. And it's suffocating us. I closed my eyes. So that was it. Not love. Not care. Guilt. She'll be fine, Clara continued, softer now, persuasive. There are places designed for this. People her age, activities, structure. Honestly, it might even be better for her. Better for me. I almost stepped away then. Almost. But then she said something that rooted me to the spot. And once everything's settled, Clara added, we can finally move forward. Sell this place, upgrade, start fresh. Sell this place. My breath caught. What about the finances? Ethan asked, his voice lower now, uncertain. Clara didn't hesitate. We'll figure it out. You're already listed on most of her accounts. It's just a matter of timing. Timing. The room felt like it tilted. We just need to be smart about it, she went on. No sudden moves. Keep things smooth. Make it seem like it's all for her benefit. I couldn't hear Ethan's response, because at that point, my ears were ringing. Not loudly, but steadily, like something inside me had shifted permanently. I stepped back slowly, careful not to make a sound, and returned to the kitchen. My coffee sat untouched on the counter, steam long gone. I stared at it for a moment, then poured it into the sink. The water swallowed it without hesitation. Just like that. I stood there, hands resting on the edge of the counter, breathing slowly. Processing. Not reacting. Because this wasn't just a conversation. It was a plan. And I had just overheard enough to understand my role in it. I wasn't family. I wasn't even a burden anymore. I was an obstacle. Something to be managed, relocated, and eventually removed from the equation. The realization didn't break me. It clarified me. Because suddenly, everything made sense. The morning conversation. The rehearsed tone. The lack of emotion. They weren't deciding what to do. They had already decided. I was just being informed. Or rather, prepared. I walked upstairs. Each step deliberate, measured. My room looked exactly the same as it had the night before. The same dresser. The same chair. The The same window with the same view. But it didn't feel the same. Because now I knew. And knowledge changes everything. I sat on the bed again. But this time I didn't cry. I didn't feel like crying. I felt awake. More awake than I had been in years. Because for the first time, I wasn't questioning myself. I wasn't wondering if I had misunderstood, overreacted, imagined things. I had heard them, clearly, and they had been even colder than I expected. I thought about the past 2 years, how carefully I had adjusted myself to fit into their lives, how I had reduced my needs, my voice, my presence, how I had convinced myself that being tolerated was the same as being loved. And now here I was, not tolerated, managed, planned, scheduled. I let out a slow breath. No, I said quietly. The words sounded stronger than I felt, but it was real, because something inside me had finally drawn a line. Not loudly, not dramatically, but firmly. They thought I had no choice, that I would go along with whatever they decided, that I would accept it the way I had accepted everything else. They were wrong. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew this. I was done waiting for permission to exist in my own life, and whatever came next, it wouldn't be their decision. It would be mine. The strangest thing about betrayal is not the moment you discover it. It's what comes after. It's the silence that follows, the ordinary routines that continue as if nothing has changed, even though everything has. The next morning, I woke up at the same time, walked down the same stairs, and made the same coffee. From the outside, nothing was different. But inside me, something had shifted so completely that even the air felt different against my skin. I didn't confront them. Not yet. That was the first decision I made. Because once you see clearly, you understand that reacting immediately only benefits the people who expect you to react. They were prepared for tears, for resistance, for emotional arguments they could dismiss or twist. What they weren't prepared for was silence. Not the kind Ethan had given me, but a deliberate, controlled silence. The kind that watches. The kind that plans. They came into the kitchen together, like always. Clara glanced at me briefly, her expression soft, rehearsed. "Good morning, Sophia," she said, almost warmly. Ethan followed with a quiet, "Morning, Mom." And for a second, just a second, it almost sounded like the past. But I knew better now. Warmth can be a performance. "Breakfast is on the table," I said simply. They sat down. Ate. Talked about work, about errands, about things that had nothing to do with me. It was almost impressive the way they could carry on like that. As if the conversation from yesterday and the one I had overheard had never happened. As if I were just part of the furniture again. I played along. I poured coffee. I cleared plates. I nodded at the right moments. I became exactly what they expected me to be: quiet, accommodating, invisible. But this time, it wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Because while they thought nothing had changed, I was already moving. Later that morning, when the house emptied out and the front door clicked shut behind them, I didn't clean the kitchen like I usually would. I didn't start laundry or make a grocery list or tend to the small, endless tasks that had quietly defined my days. Instead, I went upstairs, closed my door, and sat at my desk. For a long moment, I just looked at the surface of it, at the neat stack of papers, the pen I always used, the small framed photo of a different time. Then I reached for my phone. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. 3 days ago, they would have. 3 days ago, I would have hesitated, second-guessed myself, wondered if I was overreacting, if maybe there was still a way to fix things without disrupting anyone. But that version of me was gone now. Not completely erased, but quiet enough that I could finally hear myself think. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number. I hadn't called her in over a year. "Margaret," I said when she answered. There was a brief pause, and then her voice warmed immediately. Sophia? It's been a while. Yes, I said. It has. She didn't ask unnecessary questions. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. What do you need? I need to review my financial arrangements, I said. And I need to do it carefully. Another pause, short but meaningful. Understood, she replied. When can you come in? Today. Then come today. That was it.
No curiosity, no judgment.
Just action. I hung up and sat there for a second longer, letting the decision settle into something solid. Then I stood up. The next few hours moved quickly, almost too quickly for emotion to catch up. I got dressed, gathered the documents I needed, and left the house without leaving a note. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to explain where I was going or why. The drive felt strange. Not unfamiliar, but different. Like I was seeing everything from a slightly higher vantage point. The streets, the buildings, the people, they all looked the same, but I felt removed from them in a way that wasn't lonely. It was clarifying. Margaret's office hadn't changed. Same quiet hallway, same polished desk, same calm efficiency. She greeted me with a firm handshake and a look that told me she already understood more than I had said. We sat down. I explained everything. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Just facts. What I had overheard. What had been said. What had been implied. What I had been paying for. What they thought they were entitled to. Margaret listened without interrupting, her expression steady, her eyes sharp. When I finished, she leaned back slightly and folded her hands. Do they have direct access to your accounts? She asked. Yes, I said. At least some of them. And the house. In my name. Good, she said simply. That one word felt like an anchor. Then we have options. Options. Another word I hadn't allowed myself to fully believe in until now. For the next hour, we went through everything. Account by account. Transfer by transfer. Access permissions. Legal structures.
Safeguards.
It was meticulous, almost surgical. And with every adjustment, every change, every new boundary put into place, I felt something inside me settle further. Not anger. Control. By the time we were done, the picture looked very different. New accounts, separate and secure. Access removed where it shouldn't have been. Automatic payments identified, scheduled, and when I chose, ready to be stopped. Nothing drastic had been done yet, but everything was ready. You don't have to act immediately, Margaret said as we stood. But when you do, it will be clean.
Clean.
I liked that word.
No chaos. No confusión.
Just clarity. I thanked her and left, stepping back into the afternoon light with a strange sense of calm. Not relief, this wasn't over, but something close to certainty. Because now, for the first time, I wasn't reacting to their plan. I had my own. When I returned home, their car was already in the driveway. I paused for a moment before going inside, not out of hesitation but awareness. I knew that from this point on, every interaction mattered. Not because I needed to convince them of anything, but because they were still operating under an illusion, and I intended to let them keep it. I opened the door. Voices from the living room. Laughter. Light. Easy, unburdened. I stepped inside. Clara looked up first. Oh, you're back, she said, her tone casual. We were wondering where you went. Just out, I replied. Ethan nodded. Everything okay? I met his eyes. For a brief moment, something flickered there, uncertainty, maybe even guilt. But it passed quickly. Yes, I said. Everything is fine. And it was. Not in the way they thought, but in the way that mattered. That night, as I lay in bed again, the house sounded different. Not because it had changed, but because I had. I wasn't listening for belonging anymore. I was listening for timing. And I knew their plan had already begun. They just didn't realize. So had mine. They didn't wait long. 3 days after I met with Margaret, the conversation finally came. I knew it would. People like Clara don't build plans just to leave them sitting untouched. They execute. And they prefer control, especially the illusion of it. That morning, everything felt slightly staged, like a scene rehearsed just enough to appear natural. I walked into the kitchen and immediately sensed it. The table was already set, but not by me. Coffee poured, plates arranged, everything too neat, too deliberate. Clara stood by the counter, watching the doorway as if she had been waiting for me to appear at that exact moment. Ethan sat at the table, hands clasped together, his posture stiff. That was new. "Good morning," I said, taking my usual seat. "Morning," Ethan replied quickly, almost too quickly. Clara smiled. Not warmly, strategically. "Sophia, we were hoping to talk to you." "Of course you were," I thought. I nodded once. "About what?" Ethan glanced at Clara, silently passing the responsibility to her. She accepted it without hesitation. "We've been thinking a lot about what's best for everyone," she began, her tone calm, measured. "And we feel like it's time to revisit what we discussed the other day." Revisit. Such a polite word for something already decided. I picked up my cup, taking a slow sip before responding. "Go on." She leaned forward slightly. "We want to make sure you're comfortable, of course, but we also need to be realistic about the situation. This house, our schedules, the financial pressure, it's all becoming unsustainable." Unsustainable. Another word chosen carefully. Ethan finally spoke, his voice softer. "Mom, it's just a lot to manage." I looked at him. Really looked.
And I saw it again.
Not cruelty. Not even confidence. Avoidance. "You're right," I said calmly. "It is a lot to manage." Clara's smile widened slightly, encouraged. She thought I was agreeing. "Exactly. So we've been researching some options that might be better suited for you. Places where you'd have more support, more structure." "A facility," I interrupted. "A community," she corrected again, without missing a beat. "Of course," I said. There was a brief pause. They were waiting for resistance, for questions, for emotion. I gave them none. "And when exactly were you planning for this transition?" I asked. Clara and Ethan exchanged a glance.
"Soon," she said.
"We think it's better not to delay these things. The sooner everyone adjusts, the easier it is." Everyone. Not me. Everyone. I set my cup down carefully. "And financially?" I asked. Clara straightened slightly, as if this was the part she had prepared for most. "We've been reviewing everything, and we think it would be fair if you contributed more directly to household expenses in the meantime. Until the move." There it was. The real conversation. "How much?" I asked. Ethan shifted again, clearly uncomfortable now. Clara didn't hesitate. "We calculated that around $1,500 a month would be reasonable. That would cover your share of utilities, food, and general upkeep." My share. The words almost made me smile. "And after I leave?" I asked. "Well," she said, her tone smoothing over again, "then your expenses would go toward your new living situation, which, honestly, would be more efficient long term." Efficient. I leaned back in my chair, studying them both. They thought they were guiding this conversation. They thought they were leading me toward an outcome. What they didn't realize was that I had already reached my own. "That sounds very organized," I said. Relief flickered across Ethan's face. Clara's posture relaxed, just slightly. They thought they had succeeded.
"Good. Thank you," she said.
"But I have a question," I continued. "Of course." I folded my hands on the table. When you say contribute, what exactly do you think I've been doing for the past 2 years? Silence. It wasn't immediate panic, just a small, almost imperceptible shift. Enough for me to see it. Clara recovered first. We're not saying you haven't helped Sophia, but… No, I said gently. Let's be specific. I stood up slowly and walked to the drawer. The same drawer. The one they had never bothered to open. I pulled out the folder. When I placed it on the table, the sound was louder than it should have been. Ethan's eyes moved to it. Clara's expression tightened. "What's that?" she asked. "Clarity," I said. I opened the folder and slid the first document across the table. "The mortgage," I said. Neither of them spoke. "The utilities," I continued, placing another page down. "Electricity, water, internet." Another. "The insurance." Another. "The credit card statements." Clara's hand moved slightly, but she didn't touch the papers. Ethan leaned forward, his eyes scanning the numbers, confusion turning slowly into something else. Recognition. "Your car payments," I added quietly. "Both of them." The room changed. You could feel it, like the air had shifted direction. "I don't understand," Ethan said. "I think you do," I replied. Clara's voice came out sharper now. "You never said anything about this." "I didn't think I needed to," I said. "I assumed you were aware of how your life was being funded." "That's not fair," she snapped. "We thought." "What did you think?" I asked, meeting her eyes directly. She didn't answer, because there was no answer that wouldn't expose the truth. Ethan sat back slowly, his face pale now. "Mom, you've been paying for all of this?" "For 2 years," I said. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, full, unavoidable. "And now," I continued, my voice steady, "you're asking me to contribute." Clara crossed her arms. Defensive now. Cornered. We didn't know. And even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact that this situation isn't working anymore. There it was again. Not apology. Not gratitude. Positioning. "You're right," I said. They both looked at me. "It isn't working." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "So, what do we do?" I closed the folder slowly. "We make changes," I said. Relief flashed again across Clara's face. She thought she had regained control. But this time, I stood up. And I've already started. Confusion replaced relief. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," I said calmly, "that beginning next month, the financial arrangements you've been relying on will no longer exist." The words landed harder than anything I had said before. Ethan blinked. "What?" "The payments," I clarified. "The transfers. The support. All of it." Clara's expression cracked. Just for a second. "You can't just," she started. "I can," I said. And for the first time, my voice didn't waver. Ethan stood up now. "Mom, wait." "We didn't mean." "I know exactly what you meant," I said. And I did. Every word, every plan, every assumption. "I think this will be better for everyone," I added, echoing Clara's earlier tone. She didn't smile this time. No one did. I picked up the folder and turned toward the stairs. Behind me, I could feel it. The shift. The realization. The loss of control. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't the one losing it. The silence after that conversation didn't feel like peace. It felt like pressure. The kind that builds slowly, invisibly, until something gives way. For the next few days, the house turned into a place of careful movements and guarded words. Clara stopped pretending warmth entirely. Ethan tried, but it came out awkward, uncertain, like he was speaking a language he had forgotten. They both knew something had shifted, but they didn't yet understand how far it would go. I let them sit in that uncertainty. I continued my routines, but not the way I used to. I no longer rushed to cook before they woke up. I no longer asked what they wanted for dinner. I no longer cleaned up after them like it was my responsibility. I moved through the house as if it belonged to me again, because it did. And that quiet reclaiming unsettled them more than any argument could have. On the fourth day, the first crack appeared. I was in the kitchen, slicing fruit, when Clara walked in holding her phone, her expression tight. "Sophia," she said, her voice strained. "Did something happen with the utilities?" I didn't look up immediately. I finished the slice, placed it neatly on the plate, then turned to her. "What do you mean?" "They're saying the last payment didn't go through," she said. "The account shows insufficient funds." "Does it?" I replied calmly. Her eyes narrowed.
Yes.
"It does." I nodded slightly. "Then I suppose the payment didn't go through." That wasn't the answer she wanted. "You said next month," she snapped. "You said changes would happen next month." "I said the arrangements would end." I corrected. I didn't specify when the process would begin. Her frustration sharpened instantly. "This isn't a game." "No," I said quietly. "It isn't." She stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to escalate. Then she turned abruptly and walked out, her steps louder than necessary. I heard her voice in the living room moments later, tense and rapid as she explained the situation to Ethan. His response was quieter, harder to make out, but I could hear the strain in it. By that evening, the second crack appeared. Ethan approached me after dinner, standing awkwardly in the doorway of my room. "Mom, can we talk?" I looked up from the book I wasn't really reading. "We are talking." He hesitated, then stepped inside. "About the payments." I said.
That.
He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't realize how much you were covering. I mean, I knew you helped, but I didn't think that it was everything." I finished. He didn't answer, because he didn't need to. "I'm not trying to make things harder," he said finally. We need time to figure things out."
Time.
Such a reasonable request. If things had been different, "How much time did you give me?" I asked. He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "When you decided I needed to leave," I said. "How much time did you plan to give me to adjust?" His silence answered again. "I see," I said softly. "That's not fair," he said, but there was no conviction behind it. "No," I agreed. "It isn't." He stepped closer. "Mom, please. We're trying to fix this." "No," I said, closing the book and setting it aside. "You're trying to manage the consequences of something you didn't expect." That landed. I could see it in his face. "We didn't think you'd," he started, then stopped. "Exactly," I said. "We didn't think you'd do anything." He exhaled slowly. "So what happens now?"
Now.
That word again. It carried weight now. It mattered. "That depends," I said, standing up, "on what you're willing to take responsibility for." He looked at me, searching for something, guidance, maybe, or permission. I gave him neither, because this wasn't about helping him anymore. It was about not abandoning myself again. The third crack came the next morning. This time it wasn't subtle. Clara stormed into the kitchen, her composure gone completely. "The bank called," she said sharply. "The car payment didn't go through either." I poured my coffee slowly before answering. "I see." "You see," she repeated, incredulous. "That's all you have to say?" "What would you like me to say?" I asked. "I'd like you to fix it," she said. There it was. Expectation. Habit. Dependency. "I won't be doing that," I replied. Her eyes flashed. "You can't just cut everything off overnight. We have obligations."
"So do I," I said. "To what?" she demanded.
"To myself," I answered. The words hung between us, heavier than anything else I had said so far. She laughed then, a short, sharp sound. This is unbelievable. After everything we've done for you. I turned to face her fully. Everything you've done for me? I repeated. She didn't back down.
Yes.
We gave you a place to stay. We included you in our lives. I raised a hand slightly. Stop, I said. Not loudly, but firmly, because some lines don't need volume to hold. This is my house, I said. And for 2 years, I have funded your lives in ways you never even questioned. So, let's not rewrite history to make this more comfortable for you. She went still. Ethan appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. What's going on? She's cutting us off completely, Clara said, her tone sharp. No warning.
No transition.
Nothing. That's not true, I said calmly. There was a warning. You just didn't recognize it. Ethan looked between us, his expression strained. Mom, please. There it was again.
Please.
But not the kind that comes with understanding. The kind that comes with panic. I set my cup down. I'm moving out, I said. The words landed harder than anything else. Clara blinked. What? I've made arrangements, I continued. I'll be leaving at the end of the week. Ethan stepped forward. Wait, what? Where? Somewhere else, I said. That's not the point, he replied. You can't just leave like this. I held his gaze. Can't I? He faltered. Clara recovered faster. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting. No, I said. I'm responding. To what? She challenged. To everything, I answered. Silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't uncertain. It was final, because now they understood. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't a negotiation. This was the end of something they had taken for granted. You're really doing this, Ethan said quietly. Yes, I said. He looked down, then back up again. And what are we supposed to do? I paused. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because I wanted him to hear it clearly. You're going to do what adults do, I said. You're going to take responsibility for your own lives. Clara scoffed. Easy for you to say. Yes, I replied. It is. Because I had been doing it. For all of us. And now, I was finally doing it for myself. That night, as I packed my things, the house felt different again. Not heavy. Not tense. Just temporary. Like I was already gone. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. It felt like freedom waiting at the door. 3 months can feel like nothing, or like an entirely new lifetime. By the time the 3rd month passed, I no longer counted the days since I left. At first, I did. Not because I missed the house, but because I needed to remind myself that I had actually walked away. That I hadn't imagined it. That I had made a decision and followed through with it, something I hadn't done for myself in years. But somewhere along the way, I stopped counting. Because I wasn't measuring distance anymore, I was living inside it. The house I moved into was smaller, quieter, and completely mine. It sat at the edge of a quiet street where the mornings came slowly and the evenings stayed soft. There was a small garden out front, nothing elaborate, just enough space to grow something with your own hands. I had never realized how much I needed that. To plant something, water it, watch it grow, not because someone expected it, not because it maintained an image, but because I wanted to. The first few weeks were strange. Not lonely, as I had feared, but unfamiliar in a way that took time to understand. I wasn't used to silence that didn't carry tension. I wasn't used to making decisions without considering how they would affect someone else's mood. I wasn't used to sitting in a room without feeling like I had to justify my presence in it. At first, I would catch myself pausing before turning on the television, lowering the volume automatically, as if someone might object. I would cook and instinctively make more than I needed, then stop halfway through and remind myself, There is no one here to accommodate but you. And slowly, gently, that realization stopped feeling sad. It started feeling like permission. I built a routine, but this time it was mine. I woke when I wanted. Some mornings early, with the sun just beginning to rise, other mornings later, without guilt. I made coffee and drank it on the porch, not rushing, not thinking about who needed what next. I read. I walked. I spoke to neighbors who didn't see me as an obligation, but as a person. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't realized I had lost. I felt present in my own life. There were still moments, of course. Moments when memory would slip in quietly, uninvited. A certain smell, a familiar phrase, the sound of laughter drifting from somewhere, and suddenly I would remember how things used to be when Ethan was younger, when the house was full in a different way, when love wasn't something I had to question. Those moments didn't break me, but they reminded me that what I had left behind wasn't just a house. It was a version of my life that no longer existed. And that was something I had to grieve, even as I moved forward. The call came on a quiet afternoon. I was sitting on the porch, hands wrapped around a cup of tea, watching the wind move through the leaves in a way that felt almost deliberate, like the world was speaking in a language I was just beginning to understand again.
My phone rang.
I looked at the screen.
Ethan.
For a second, I didn't answer. Not out of fear, out of choice. Because this time, I wasn't reacting automatically. I was deciding. Then I picked up. Hello. There was a pause on the other end. Then his voice, quieter than I remembered.
Mom.
I didn't say anything right away. I let him sit in that space. I wasn't sure if you'd answer, he added. I wasn't sure either. I replied honestly. Another pause. Then he exhaled. I wanted to talk to you.
I'm listening.
His voice shifted, unsteady now. Things didn't work out. I leaned back slightly, already knowing what he meant before he said it. Clara left, he continued. About a month ago. I closed my eyes briefly. Not in surprise. In understanding. I see, I said. She said she couldn't handle it, he went on. The stress, the money, everything falling apart. She said it wasn't the life she signed up for. There was bitterness in his voice, but also something else. Awareness. And you? I asked. He hesitated. I don't think I knew what life I had signed up for either, he admitted. That was the first honest thing he had said in a long time. I lost the house, he continued. Had to sell it to cover everything. I'm in a small apartment now, working more than I ever have. I listened, not with judgment, not with satisfaction, just listening. I keep thinking about what I said, he added. What I let happen. And I don't know how I didn't see it. How I didn't see you. There it was. The part that mattered. Not the consequences. The recognition. I see it now, he said quietly. And I hate that it took losing everything to understand it. I let the silence settle between us. Not to punish him, but to give his words space to exist. I'm not calling to ask for anything, he continued quickly. I know I don't have that right. I needed you to know that I understand. And that I'm sorry.
Sorry. Such a simple word.
And yet, it carries weight only when it's real. I stood up slowly and walked to the edge of the porch, looking out at the garden I had planted myself. The small green leaves, the quiet growth, the evidence of time spent with intention. Do you remember, I said, when you were a child and you broke that window with a baseball? He let out a faint, surprised breath. Yeah, I remember. You were so scared to tell me, I continued. You thought I'd be angry. I thought you'd never forgive me. And what did I do? I asked. You sat me down, he said slowly. And you said that mistakes don't define who we are, but what we do after them does. I smiled slightly. That's right. There was a pause. Then his voice softer. I don't know what to do after this. I took a breath, and for the first time in this conversation, I felt something warm rise in my chest. Not obligation, not responsibility.
Choice.
You start by understanding that an apology doesn't erase what happened, I said. It opens the door to something new. But what comes next depends on what you're willing to build. I want to fix this, he said quickly.
No, irreplaceably.
You can't fix the past, but you can change who you are moving forward. Silence again. Then, does that mean there's still a chance for us?
I thought about that.
Not emotionally. Honestly. Yes, I said, but not the way it was before. I understand. If we have a relationship, I continued, it will be different. I won't go back to who I was. I won't lose myself again. And I won't carry responsibilities that aren't mine. You shouldn't, he said immediately. Good, I replied. Another pause. Then, carefully, he asked, Can I come visit you? I looked around, at the porch, the garden, the life I had rebuilt. My home is open to you, I said.
But you come as a guest.
Not as someone expecting anything, just as my son, willing to start again. His voice broke slightly. I'd like that. After we hung up, I didn't move right away. I just stood there, feeling the quiet. But it wasn't the same quiet as before. This one was full, not of absence, of presence. Because I had something now I hadn't had in a long time. Not control over others, but ownership of myself. I sat back down, the chair rocking gently beneath me, and watched the sun begin to lower in the sky. 62 years. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to fit into someone else's life. I was living my own. And that was enough.